Audiences remember a powerful story, sights, smells, emotions, and who they shared it with. I'm so excited today to have Nic Fitzgerald from Friendly Giant Films. Nic is an entrepreneur that helps entrepreneurs and businesses build relationships with their audience by telling emotionally connected stories using film and video. It's a simple fact. Facts tell, stories sell. If you're not telling your story, you're missing out on a ton of sales. Let's cue the intro and jump right into this amazing interview. I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control. Control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm excited you joined me today. We are so lucky and privileged and seriously honored to have the great Nic Fitzgerald. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. And you're known as the Friendly Giant. How'd that come about?
It's so funny. It came. I'm 6'9", for those, just so for context on the giant part. I literally am a giant, right? But I played basketball and all these kinds of things growing up. But I worked on Hollywood films that were shooting here in Utah. And I just kind of got the reputation of being a hard worker and a cool dude on set. But there was one show in particular where the director of photography was from Australia. He was this cool guy. And I worked on the lighting crew. And it's funny, every time he needed something from my crew, he would say, hey, I need my Friendly Giant to go and grab this or make this adjustment and stuff. And so after that show, every time I went on a new set, because in Utah, the film community is pretty small. So you work with a lot of the same people on different shows. And so it just kind of stuck. People are like, oh, sweet, the Friendly Giant's on this show. And so I just kind of assumed that role. And then when I went to incorporate or like create an LLC for my business, for my company, I'm like, what do I want to call it? Because it's a video production company. And I was like, well, everyone calls me the Friendly Giant. So I'm like, Friendly Giant Films, that'll be it, and it's awesome. Just has stuck ever since. So that's where it came from.
That's so cool. I love it. Those are the best ones. And they always have something that resonates close to home. That's cool.
Yeah.
6'9".
Yeah.
Holy cow. I think LeBron James is 6'9". That gives a little perspective. Not really, because when you watch him on TV, they don't look big because everybody out there is huge.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
well, and it's funny, like, growing up in Utah, following the Utah Jazz, Karl Malone was 6'9".
Oh, yeah.
But like John Stockton, for instance, he was a little point guard and he looked so tiny on the court, but he was 6'2", which is for most people, that's like considered tall, It's just kind of funny how in the NBA and stuff, how my positions in high school, I played center. In college, I played power forward and center, depending on matchups. And then when I went to and played semi-pro, I was a power forward and like a small forward. It's just like how your game has to change based on the level that you're playing at. All those dudes are super huge.
So crazy. Well, I recognized your size when I looked at a picture of you sitting on stage with Russell Brunson, and you're sitting there and he's standing there and you're still bigger than him. Now, I know there's perspective, but still you were like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know, it's funny. He had me sit down because he didn't want me towering over him on his own stage, that kind of thing, I think. But yeah, it's fun to be tall. I never get lost in crowds, or I can spot people easy if somebody else is lost. So
it's so true. Well, I never miss an opportunity to be able to hear your backstory. And I know this is sort of for us as entrepreneurs and business people, this is like our bread and butter, and this is your thing too. But like, I would love to share your backstory, and I love hearing it. I've heard
pieces and parts of it along the way. I'd love to hear it, love to share that with our audience. So give us your backstory. How'd you end up here where you're at on this podcast? And how'd you get to this point doing all the stuff you've done?
Yeah, well, man, it's crazy how our stories, you know, the paths that each of us are on, how it's not a straight path. It winds, it curves, it goes up and down. Sometimes it goes backwards, upside down, you know, all these different things. And, you know, when I was a kid, I always loved movies and stories and things like that. It was a way for me to be able to escape from, you know, being tall. I was always tall. You know, in sixth grade, I was 6 feet tall. My freshman year of high school, I was 6'5", you know, so I always stood out, and it brought a lot of unwanted attention for me. I was shy and I was self-conscious about it. And so I found an outlet in my imagination, and that was triggered through movies and stories and all those kinds of things. But, you know, as you grow up and mature and, you know, depending on how you look at education systems or things like that in your point of view, being programmed a little bit to get a real job, quote unquote, and, you know, be responsible, all those kinds of things. I went down that path after I finished my basketball career. You know, I worked a 9-to-5 job. I sat at a desk, you know, all these different kinds of things. And it was hard for me to understand and to find something that would, one, engage that competitive side of me where I thrived, you know, as a basketball player in competition and things like that, but also to do something that I actually enjoyed. You know, I found as I went from career to career to career, all these different changes when I was younger, you know, that I loved the people that I worked with, but I hated the work that I was actually doing, right? You know, working in, I was an inventory clerk. I was a purchasing manager. I was a payroll manager for a company. You know, I did all these different things trying to find what I would enjoy, but mostly what would pay me, you know, well. I was chasing paper. You know, I have 4 kids, been married for 18 years and all that kind of stuff. And so I have those responsibilities as a husband, as a father, to make sure that we're taken care of. And so I would just look for any opportunity to make more money than what I was making before. And it didn't really matter what it was. I just wanted the money. And then I started to learn that there was no fulfillment in that. And I really hated it, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, those of you who are listening have probably had those same feelings many times throughout your life, right? And I remember I had just switched careers. I'd left a company I had been with for 6 years, and all these kinds of things. And I went to a new company, and 7 months later, I got laid off. And, you know, at the time we had 3 young kids, all these, a mortgage, you know, all these things. And I was asking myself again, what do I want to do? And I started a career as a financial advisor. I was unemployed for 6.5 months as I was trying to get licensing and all these things to get hired. And I started a financial services career working as an advisor, doing retirement planning and, you know, life insurance and all these kinds of things. But I thought that I found my calling there because I was able to connect with people and hear their stories and open up and build relationships that I felt were really meaningful and would help them in the long run and their families too, because, you know, we're protecting assets or creating a legacy or these kinds of things. But, you know, life happens sometimes, and I was in a partnership that dissolved, and I had to restart my financial practice, and it was just a death sentence. I could not figure out how to get things going again. After I talked to all of the people that I knew, you know, all these types of things, trying to drum up business out of thin air, I had a really hard time with it. And it was 2014, that year was when that change happened. And I knew it was about October. It was around this time last year, or this time in 2014, that I could see the writing on the wall. I wasn't going to hit my required sales numbers, those kinds of things. And I was most likely going to be let go because of it. And so there I was at 34 years old, now with 4 kids, with our youngest being less than a year old. He was born in 2014, knowing that I was going to have to make another change, and I just didn't want to do it. And so, in November comes and I get fired officially. I get the letter from the firm and all that kind of stuff saying that my employment is terminated. And now it's time. What am I going to do? So a lot of things happened in that year where I was working so hard, making zero, like that money, that year on paper, 2014, I made like $15,000. It was just a disaster financially. We were renting a basement from a family member, you know, all these things. Had a young kid. We had just barely finished like paying off the hospital bills from the delivery, you know, all these things. We were just financially just destroyed, and I had no savings left to all these kinds of things. And I started to think really hard about what I wanted to do next. And I just knew that I didn't want to start over in another vocation or career path. I didn't want to work in the financial services industry because of my experiences with other people in my firm, former partners, other people that, you know, it was so competitive within our own firm that people did underhanded things, and I just didn't want to be in that environment anymore. And so I had this opportunity to help a friend from high school. He wanted to film an audition tape for The Biggest Loser. Remember that when that show was going? And so I did, and I made this thing, and I remember sitting with him and his wife watching it when it was done, and they both had just like tears streaming down their face. And I was like, huh, I'm onto something here, right? When I was a kid, again, I loved creativity. I always tinkered around and played with video cameras. You know, I'm a child of the 80s, so we had one of those like RCA or shoulder camcorder, VHS camcorders, right? And my friends and I would make mock episodes of Cops and, you know, stuff like that when we were teenagers. So I always had that hobby. And people always said that I was talented at it. I would do, instead of book reports, I would do video reports, you know, that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of fun. And then having this experience with my friend, I'm like, you know what? I really liked doing that. He didn't pay me for it. It was just me doing it for fun, right? And I was just like, I really like doing that. I think I'm pretty good at it. Other people are telling me I'm good at it. Why not see what I can do? So I made that decision at the beginning of 2015 that I was going to start a video production business. And you know, I didn't even have a video camera of my own. That's how committed I was to the idea that I wanted to do this without even having the proper tools. I had to borrow gear from my dad, or, you know, things like that until I could save up enough money for my own. And it was a lot of fun. So like that transition of finally, I never thought that I could make money with my creative abilities, you know. I'd always heard that people considering it just a hobby, or how hard it was to get people to actually pay, you know, for creative work and things like that. And so, but I just finally listened to that inner voice of, you've done all the quote unquote, the be responsible, do the right thing, you know, go to school, all these things that society tells you to, and your life has been, you've hated it, you know, like, you haven't been fulfilled in what you've done in your work and things like that. So I didn't have anywhere to go but up financially. So there was nothing to lose, so to speak. And I was like, I'll just going to put my head down for a couple of years and see what I can create, you know. And that's when I started. That journey was in 2015. And of course, I talk about how our journey is never a straight line. You know, I started getting some video clients, and it was fun. But they didn't have much money. I was doing these videos and I was getting paid like $200 or $300 for them, you know. And I was so nervous to ask for that much money, you know, that kind of a thing when working with people. But again, as a father of four, you know, we still had rent. We had, you know, we have responsibilities and financial obligations. I wasn't making enough money still to support my family. So I was able to, through you know, whether you call it fate or divine intervention or whatever your belief is, I was in the right place at the right time when a house was on fire. I saw smoke in the distance. I threw my camera bag in the car, and I went and I found it, and I got to this house that was like fully involved with flames shooting like 20 feet off the roof and stuff, and got some amazing footage. And worked with KSL, is the NBC affiliate here in Utah, to give them that footage. And after a month or so after that incident, I was able to leverage that and become a freelance photojournalist for NBC. and stuff. And, you know, I had never intended, I never wanted to shoot news, you know, that was nothing that would ever cross my mind. But as I started to do that, I was able to, you know, make $20 an hour as a freelancer for them. And I worked almost full-time hours that whole spring and through the fall of 2015. And so that gave me a little bit of security, and it helped me learn more with my skills with storytelling visually and technically, working in a fast-paced environment, going up to strangers and asking them personal questions, because I rarely went out with a reporter. So I was the one doing the actual, you know, interviews and all that stuff, and then editing it and putting it all together and getting it ready for the 5 o'clock or the 6 o'clock or the 10 o'clock news, right? And so it was a lot of fun to be able to work in that environment. But again, I was making okay money. It was consistent, but it still wasn't enough. So I was trying to figure out how to bridge that gap, right? So I'd get clients here and there, but then I was like, you know what? I need to. I've seen what it's like to work in doing all aspects of production. What would it be like to specialize in one area? So I was like, where can I learn to do that? And I naturally thought film, you know, working on a film crew, because they have, you know, camera departments, and there's grip and electric, which is all the lighting stuff, and, you know, all these different things. So I was able to get my way onto a film set in September of 2015. It was a little indie, you know, movie called Saturday's Warrior that was filmed here in Utah. And I remember my first day on set, we were at Liberty Park, which is close to downtown Salt Lake. And I was an unpaid intern for craft services, which crafty, we call it, is all the snacks and the drinks for the cast and crew while they're shooting. So all day long, I'm running cases of water and soda and snacks across the park, handing out water bottles to the cast and crew, you know, all that kind of stuff, restocking things. And as a 35-year-old, right, you know, unpaid, starting at the bottom, like below the bottom of the totem pole, you know, that kind of thing. But I did such a good job handing out water bottles, they kept inviting me back after that. And by the end of that movie, I was working and I was being paid. I was on the camera crew.
Nice.
And like, which that doesn't happen, you know,
Right.
You don't just walk in off the street and then, you know, by the last day of filming, you're working on camera crew and get to do some cool stuff. And I got bit by the bug, right? I was just like, this is so cool. Production is awesome. Like, there's time and there's money to like really get things set up, and, you know, all these things, and it's not being rushed. And so I worked on 13 feature films from that point,
Wow.
2 network TV series, a whole bunch of commercials with brands like, you know, IntelliBed and the Boy Scouts of America went back when they, you know, weren't bankrupt and all these kinds of things. Like, and with production companies like the Harmon Brothers that have done a lot of viral ads and things like that. And then also in between doing shifts with the news and all that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of fun. The problem was that in Utah, most movies that come, I only worked on 2 that were small budget. And in Hollywood, it's funny, small budget is somewhere from that 5 to 10 to 15 million. That's like a small budget movie. I only worked on 2 that were in that range. Everything else was below, you know, 2 million in budget. A lot of Hallmark Christmas movies, you know, that kind of stuff is what I worked on. And when you work on small budgets and you play a small part, you know, if I'm just setting up the lighting or working on a crew of 3 guys and we're doing all the lighting, I'm only going to get $200, $300 a day, you know, when I'm working. And it's a 12, 14, sometimes 16-hour day. And so I wasn't making great money still, but I was working a whole lot more. And when I was home, I was exhausted. You know, you'd work late, you'd get home at 3 or 4 in the morning on Saturday, you'd sleep through half the day, and then you'd really have like Saturday evening and Sunday to be with your family until you start again on Monday. And I just knew it wasn't working. I was like, I'm having fun. I'm fulfilled in the work that I'm doing, but I'm not meeting my financial obligations still. We were on food stamps and Medicaid and still renting a basement, you know, all these things. Even though I was working with Oscar winners and Emmy winners and Hollywood producers and stuff, it looked so glamorous to everyone else looking in, but, you know, still we were broke and poor and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so it came to a head in 2017 where I was just like, something has to change. I mentioned that we were on food stamps, and July of 2017, I got a letter and a call from the state saying that we were going to be, we were being audited to see if we'd received too much assistance in the SNAP, you know, food stamp program. And the year before, I made $25,000. And I was so upset that I was working so hard and making so little, and now we were being audited to see if we'd received too much assistance. And we had to give, you know, 2 years of tax returns and bank statements and every, you know, income statement or pay stub that we had got for 2 years. And they went through it with everything and all that kind of stuff. It was so frustrating to me that I'm like, I felt like I was being picked on, you know, a little bit, you know. I believe in God, and I'll admit, like at the time I was like, what the heck? Why? You know, I'm working so hard. Why are you pushing me down again? You know, that kind of stuff. And I went to Facebook to complain about it, you know, to seek some validation and to feel a little bit better about myself.
Right.
And I got that. I got the there's, you're doing a good job. It'll be okay. Keep pushing kind of stuff, which is what I wanted, but I didn't get what I needed until later that evening. And you mentioned Russell Brunson, that picture of me sitting on stage with Russell Brunson.
Yeah.
Russell Brunson, for those of you who don't know who he is, he owns a company called ClickFunnels. I've known him since kindergarten. You know, we went to elementary school, middle school, high school together. So I'd known him for a long time, but he saw that post and he sent me a message. And it went something to the effect of like, hey man, I saw your post. I'm sorry that things aren't going well for you, but I think I might know what the problem is. And if you're open to it, I know we haven't spoken really in depth since high school, other than just like, hey, and how's it going on social media? But I don't want to overstep my bounds or anything like that. But if you would like my thoughts, I'd be happy to share it with you. And I was like, of course I would, you know. We'd had a couple of conversations, but nothing in depth, like I mentioned. And, you know, I know that he had something. I didn't know what I didn't know what he did or anything like that, but I knew that he had a level of success that I hadn't had. So I was open to hearing what he had to say. And he turned my mind onto this idea that I was focusing so much on my skills, like being really good at creating videos or camera work, or, you know, the technical skills that I had. And I was focusing so much on those, and then hoping that I would be able to make, you know, be valued enough to make the money that I wanted, when in fact, the work that I was doing was a small part of, you know, somebody else's vision. And so I was only going to get a small piece. I was only, my, you know, ceiling was limited. And that if I focused on how to use my skills to help other people make money with them, then I would make and earn more money myself. And so I was like, I gobbled it up. You know, he sent me his podcast. He's like, go and listen to this. And if you listen to this and share some of the things you're learning, I'll record a podcast specifically for you if you want, and tell you what I would do if I was in your situation. And so I was like, sure, this is awesome. Because I knew, again, that he had success that I hadn't. And so I did that. He did the podcast. It was way cool. And, you know, a lot of fun. And I learned a ton from it. And so that shift happened. And I was like, okay, I don't want to work in Hollywood on these movies anymore, because my body can't take the grind. And I just we need to get out of this basement. You know, we're cramped, 4 of us or 6 of us, 4 kids in a basement apartment, all those kinds of things. So I put my focus back on wanting to create stories and videos for businesses, right? But my approach was different. It wasn't like video is the thing that you need to do and it's going to sell your stuff. You know, it was video's the vehicle that you can use But if you have the right message, if you have the story, if you have the focus that connects and draws people to you, that is what makes the video work, right? And then that story also can be used when you're going on a podcast, or if you're doing a Facebook Live, or you're speaking from stage, or, you know, all these different ways. If you had the message down, it didn't really matter the vehicle, it was going to connect. And so it all just really clicked for me, you know, in the fall of 2017. And I just started running from there. And, you know, since then, you know, I joined Russell Brunson. I joined his coaching program for a couple of years, and that was a scary thing because it was not cheap. It was, at the time, it was $18,000 a year, or $1,800 a month when I joined it. Now it's like a $25,000, $2,500 a month kind of program. But I joined it not having the money to pay for it, you know, but I just knew it was something that I needed to do, and I was motivated, and I went to work. And within 2 weeks of joining it, I was able to get my first $25,000 client, you know, these kinds of things. And just things really started to accelerate for me. And part of it was, yes, due to the coaching or the training or the ideas, but, you know, with Michael, with what you teach, you can have access to the greatest minds and the greatest education or information, but if you don't do anything with it, if you don't take action, if you're not a doer, it doesn't matter, right? And so, you know, I give credit for giving me the motivation or the ideas and things like that, but then I give myself the credit too for taking action and taking the steps and being a doer with what I felt that I needed to do. And, you know, we went in April of 2018. I was still struggling financially, to December of that same year. I had crossed 6 figures in my business that year, you know, in 8 months. We were able to move out of the basement into the house that we're renting a house right now. I was able to take my wife on a cruise for the first time, our first trip in like years and years, where it was just the two of us, you know. It was just great. And not to say that everything's been perfect since then, you know. Things evolved. COVID-19, you know, like my whole business model had to change earlier this year when everything shut down. But it was just one of those things when I was able to flip that switch in my mind, or have that change in thinking. It changed everything for me to now the work that I do is super fulfilling. It's impactful for, you know, the people that I work with, but it's impactful for the people that they work with, right? The impact that you have with your message and your solutions and your products and services, you benefit from it financially yourself, but the lives that it changes and benefits for those that actually use it and get into your programs or whatever is so cool. And it's just been so fun to see that happen, you know. I haven't worked on a film set since, as a crew member, since early 2018. I worked on a film last year in November 2019, but I was an actor this time, so I got to have all the fun in front of camera. But, you know, I've had a lot of awesome opportunities to travel the world and speak on stages, and to create amazing videos and assets and create stories for people's brands that, you know, have substance. It's not just fluff and things like that. It really helps, you know, their audience, your audience, be connected to you, understand who you are, why you're passionate about what you do, how you even got started. And obviously when they learn that stuff, they fall in love with you and what you're all about. Plus they love what you're offering. They were looking for it in the first place. That's how they found you, right? So it just connects all those dots and turns people into family relationships that they stick with you for a long time, as opposed to always having to find transactions and, you know, keep the pipeline full, you know, churn and burn kind of a thing. It builds that long lasting thing where they're just going to stick with you. And that's what I love about, you know, where that journey that I've been through, going through the washing machine, you know, a few times, and being able to see now how I'm able to interact and impact people's lives and businesses through what we create together is a lot of fun.
It was really amazing. And I, like I said at the beginning, I am so honored and privileged to have you here talking with us, sharing your story today, because I remember driving in the car, listening to that episode of that podcast of Russell's and him talking about you and your story. I had no idea who you were. He didn't say your name, obviously. And over the last, few years, and just being able to finally understand that it was you in the background there, and to see what you have created and what you're doing. I mean, it's massively inspirational, first and foremost. And it's so, I mean, I don't know if it's like, I think it's like the human dream, right? Like we go through and we have our hard times and we have the things that we struggle with. And you are like, yeah, look, it worked. Look, you just keep going, like go do it. And it worked. And how cool is that? I mean, it's fun to be able to kind of have our paths cross finally and be able to do it. I think it's really crazy how things work out, but excited that we finally got to meet and be able to share your story in another way and from the other end. So I appreciate you being so forthcoming. When everything wasn't working out, because you talked about it, and it was numerous times. It wasn't like it was like, oh, look, things didn't work out once and I made it and everything worked out, And it's when all those things weren't working out, when you had no money and there was no money coming in, how did you keep your emotions in check and keep pushing through that?
Man, that was, for me, I'll say my family was a huge reason that I was able to keep going and not let the frustration, take over. I married like a complete saint angel on earth, like through all of my career changes throughout, all the time that we've been married. She has never once, even though she's totally justifiably, has every right to complain or, that kind of stuff. She never once gave me an ultimatum or, that kind of stuff. And I know that not everyone is as lucky as I am to have that. But she was always just like, if you feel this is what we should do, I support you. How do we make it work? It was amazing. But when I would try something and it just didn't work, or I would put my heart into something and I loved the outcome, but then I like looked at the paycheck that I got afterwards and I'm like, I spent like 40 hours doing this project, and I got $200. Like that's not good. That's not good enough. And it was frustrating because for a long time, even when I started, I believed those lies that like people don't have budgets, or they don't value, they're not going to pay you thousands of dollars, or for one video or things like that. I thought that I had to line item everything or nickel and dime myself in order to get people to want to work with me. And so all of these different things. And then, I mentioned how I'm competitive. I was a top 200 recruit basketball player in the country going into my senior year of high school. I had a lot of scholarship offers and all these things. And so I really thrived on that. But like my drive, I was just like, I do not want to go back to working and working for somebody else that up to that point, all of my experience with CEOs or like, leaders in companies were that they didn't care about the people as long as they got the result. That's all they cared about was the bottom line. And, with that frustration, I was just like, I can't go back to doing that for somebody else. I can't go back and work my guts out and hope that somebody sees my value and gives me a raise or, that kind of stuff. It was just, it was hard, but I had a lot of sleepless nights. I had a lot of pain and frustration and anger at times, because it wasn't like I was just like, I want to be a millionaire and then laying on the couch and eating potato chips and waiting for it to happen. Like I was working my butt off,
Right.
that kind of stuff. it reminds me of if you've ever seen the movie What About Bob?
Yeah.
There's a scene where Bob's character is in in Dr. Marvin's office, and he's like, "Gimme, gimme, gimme! I'm doing the work. I'm baby stepping. I'm not a slacker." All these kinds of things. I'm like, I'm doing the work. Where's the payoff, right? But to overcome it, like one, it was I would look at my wife, I'd look at my kids, and I would just know that they deserve better. That they have put up with the challenges of me changing and being fired or going through layoffs and all these things.
Yeah.
And they love me still, and I was like, they deserve not because I want them to be able to drive a Lamborghini or things like that, but they just deserve to not have to worry about, the things that we were worried about. How are we going to pay our rent this month? Or, how much money is left on the food stamps so we can get groceries, all these kinds of things. I just didn't want to have them go through that anymore. And so that's what drove me. And it's funny, like in the fall of 2017, it was actually 3 years ago yesterday, I was shooting a video for my company, my first real promo video for my company to introduce people to me. And when I had that idea, it was like lightning struck my brain. I wrote it all out, but I was afraid to do it. I just let it sit in my notebook for a few months. And I didn't do anything about it. But again, I had this realization. It was at a event here in Salt Lake City that had a bunch of speakers like Gary Vee and Kevin O'Leary, and then Tony Robbins was like the keynote, and he did his little like 4 or 5 hour long, thing, his quote unquote short version of
Right.
And I had this breakthrough during it where I was like, up to this point, everything that I'd worked on was somebody else's idea. It was somebody else's movie. It was somebody else's story, those kinds of things. And if it was a terrible story, it wasn't a reflection on me. I was just doing the lighting or the camera work. It wasn't me. But this story in particular, this video, it was me. It was my story. And if I failed, if I can't tell my own story, how am I going to get somebody else to believe that I can help them tell theirs, right? And I would be seen as a fraud, and I would have to start over again, and I didn't want to do that, right? That kind of thing. And I realized that I started asking myself, if it's a success or if it's a failure, what in my life does not change? And it came back to my family. Like, whether it's a wild success and all our wildest dreams come true from it, or if it's a total flop, my wife, my kids, my parents, my sister, my brother, they're all still going to love me. That's not going to change. And for me, that's what unlocked or knocked over that barrier for me doing it. And 2 weeks later, I was in the editing chair. I'd had it shot and was putting it all together. And that's like on friendlygiantfilms.com, that video is right on the front page, right? It tells us a little story about me going to the movies with my grandma and these kinds of things. And it was just one of those things, and it was well received and all these things. And it just, my family and my purpose, my why is them, right? I want to help people, but with their things, but by helping others, I'm helping their families, which then helps my family, and all that kind of stuff. And that's really how I was able to grit through the not fun times, to just look at them and be like, okay, game on. Like, this isn't for my glory or my, fulfillment or status or things like that. It was just, I wanted to be able to provide and give them what they deserved and what they needed, and not have to worry about it,
Absolutely. I totally believe this idea that the quality of our communication is the quality of our life, and how we communicate, not only outward using our stories and mediums like you have learned to use and utilize, but also our communication to ourselves and how we communicate and talk to ourselves. And even just listening to your story and listening to that little piece there, you're talking a lot about how you were talking to yourself and how you do, but like now, how do you see it? Like, you found a lot of success, you're in the right trajectory, you're doing things that are coming back to you in the way that you intend. what do you find yourself saying to you? I mean, I know that's a weird question, but like we talk to ourselves all the time, and clearly the language has shifted and the story has shifted, the one that you tell you. So what do you find yourself communicating to
Yeah.
yourself on a regular basis that's making the biggest difference?
To be honest, like the things that I tell myself constantly throughout the day are, one, I've told this to myself so many times that now it just happens without me thinking. If I have a thought or an idea pop into my head, whether that's to reach out to somebody or to write this down or to do a Facebook Live or whatever, like I do it as soon as humanly possible. I don't be like, oh, that's cool, and put it on the side and then come back to it. It's like, as soon as I have a moment, if I'm out or whatever, when I'm back, I'm writing it down or, starting it or doing it. And when I've told myself to, this is what I tell myself is like holding back and not doing and not, whether it's sharing your story or following that prompting or that feeling that you should do something or reach out to somebody or say something. The longer you put that off, the longer you're keeping someone else in pain. There are people, this is one of my mantras that I tell people is like, there are people who are searching for your voice right now. They are searching for you. They might not know specifically they're looking for Michael or for Nick, right? But when they hear your voice, they will recognize it. It will resonate with them and it will change their life. It could save their life. I've had, an experience where that literally happened with a message that I put out there. But the longer you keep yourself quiet, one, you're being selfish, so get over yourself that way. But the longer you're keeping somebody in the dark, away from answers, away from progress, and you are uniquely qualified to help very specific people in this world. Like I said, they'll hear your voice and they'll recognize it. But the longer you keep quiet, there are other people who are going to make noise, and there will be some semblance of what they say that's going to connect with them, and they'll go with them instead, right? And what a shame that is to know that there are people that you can serve, but because you were scared or too busy or, whatever it might be, you withheld that goodness from them and, denied them the opportunity to change their life. And so that's how I speak to myself whenever it comes to coming on a podcast or doing a Facebook Live, or when I have an idea for an offer or a product or a service, to not worry about, oh, are people going to think, oh, here comes a sales pitch from Nick or that kind of stuff. It's an opportunity for you to serve and help somebody. The money is just a side effect of that. I truly believe it. Like the more that you serve, the more you get fulfillment, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. And so that's what I tell myself, is that there's somebody out there right now listening to this podcast interview right now, right, that needed to hear that. And you may never become a client of mine or whatever, and that doesn't matter. If it triggers or inspires somebody to make change or take action steps towards what they truly feel that they should do, then that's worth it to me in the end. And so that's how I approach every day, every message, every opportunity to interact with people.
One of the things that comes up a lot when I work with my clients, and it came up a day or two ago with a client of mine, I think you could probably help with, and I want to bring it out. Like you said, just go with the gut, right? But you had an initial run at doing filming and storytelling, and it was like it was shown to you early on, like, hey, do this. And you went, okay, I'll do it. And then you went, nah, I gotta go do that. And what would you tell to somebody that has that skill set and it's been shown to them? Yeah. That path has been shown to them, and they're like, oh, but I am not qualified. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. I'm not going to do that. But they've been shown that vision. Like, yeah. What would you say?
Well, first thing is I always say, never let your mind talk your heart out of doing something. If you feel it, Like, you got to do it. You have to. And I know that's terrifying to a lot of people, to most people. And like I said, I started a video production company without a video camera of my own. Like, I had to borrow one and try and find ways to make it work until I could save up enough money to do it. Right. And I had my path shown to me very young, right? Like, Star Wars was my escape. It was a place where I felt I belonged to something, where people didn't care if I was super tall, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Chewbacca was really tall, so I knew he was taller than me, so he was going to take all that tall attention.
Right.
But, like, all joking aside, when I look back on my journey and how hard I fought against my path, against knowing what I should do, I've known for a long time that I wanted to make a living with my creative abilities. I play music. I made a run at trying to become a singer-songwriter, in my late 20s, all of those things. But I believed the lies that you couldn't make money doing it, right? And so whether it's a creative thing or whatever it is that you're seeing in your life, life leaves clues, right? And when you finish something and you just have that feeling of like, that was really good. I really, really enjoyed that. Whatever it might be, whether you got a paycheck at the end of it or not, if you feel that that's something you should do, talk to your support system, whether it's your spouse or partner or loved ones or family members, those kinds of things, and share that vision. They're going to tell you you're crazy, or they're going to be like, oh, that's really risky, right? They're going to give you the reasons to not do it. But I'm going to tell you that when you hear those things, you're going to feel different. You're going to feel that they are wrong and that, no, like, this is something that I need to do, right? And for me, I've always been a sink or swim kind of person, like, but I'm really tall, so I can reach the bottom of the pool easier too, right? But like, if you have to work on the side and build it up, like, do that. If you are a all-in person like I am, or you just jump in and get stuff going, it's worth it. It's not easy. It's not, it's terrifying at times. You will lose sleep. You will feel stress, you'll feel that gamut of emotions, but going through it myself, and I still do, like I mentioned earlier, this whole year, I had to change how I was doing things. I was projected at the beginning of the year to do way better than what I have done because everything shut down and I couldn't travel around the world anymore to go shoot videos. I got back from Sweden for shooting at the Volvo factory for a few days, and then the world shut down, right? And so, but I promise you, I can't say that you'll, make all the money that you wanted in 6 months or in a year or 2 years. I can't tell you what that timeline is because I don't know what action you're going to be taking, right? But the value and the growth comes in taking that step. Whatever you feel that first step is, take it. Get on that path and then just take it step by step, and the path will reveal itself as you go. You're not going to like sometimes that it goes through a mud bog and you're going to have to like get dirty and messy doing it. But when you summit that peak, or, when you crest one of the hills and the peaks along the way on your journey, it's glorious and it's incredible. But following what your heart, what your soul, whatever you believe, the universe, God, the spirit, whatever it might be, when you follow those feelings, good is going to be the result, as long as you keep trying and keep pushing for it. You get tested, you might get a little inspiration or an idea, and it's a test to see if you're going to do it, and if you do, then great. Then there will be another little, thing for you to try out. If you don't, then, the more difficult it's going to be for you to actually take the first steps. I was 35 years old when I started, when I actually finally ignored the outside voice of, you need to be responsible, you've got 4 kids, all that kind of stuff, to being like, do what you feel is right. It's not going to be easy, but I'm fortunate enough to have that support system that allowed me to do it. I know that some people don't have that, and that, you don't want your relationships to suffer or end as a result of it. So you have to be mindful of it. But if you can convey and share that, what you feel to those people around you, they might think that you're crazy, but guess what? They're still going to love you. They're still going to be there for you. And when you involve them, like I would show the kids when I'd get a check from a project or something like that, I would show them how much it was and say, remember when I was gone or when I was doing this, this is what I got for doing that, right? Like sharing that journey with them and including them gets them invested and interested, and they kind of hold you accountable. Like, hey, Dad, I remember I wrote a check to myself for $1 million and I dated it, right? And I put it in my wallet and I showed my kids and all that kind of stuff. And they still ask me like, do you have your $1 million check yet? Right? And I'm like, oh no, it's not until this, that kind of a thing. It's just funny when you include them in it, they hold you accountable, because whether they think you're crazy or not, they're going to ask you like, so how's it going? That kind of thing. And you either have to have an embarrassing conversation like, oh, I quit doing that or whatever. Or you can be like, oh, I'm doing this and this and this. I'm struggling a little bit with this. And then people just naturally want to help. And they're like, oh, maybe I can introduce you to this, or, that kind of thing. It's just take the steps and listen to the heart. Don't let your mind talk your heart out of doing it. And it'll work out. You'll be just have so much growth personally, that even if it like didn't pan out or it didn't work, you'll be way better off for doing it, and you'll have better clarity on where to go next, from it.
Yeah, for sure. That's a perfect segue to our next section, because you're talking a lot about emotions and feeling it and paying attention to what you feel. Mm-hmm. And I believe that as well, because in so many instances we ignore some of that. And that's oftentimes what gets us into more of our challenges and hard times, is when we ignore that path. Paulo Coelho in The Alchemist said it is your personal legend, like follow that. You got to pay attention. And sometimes people ignore it so often that they can't hear it anymore, because they've gotten used to putting up a wall and blocking it. And so it's such a great message. And so into this next segment, I call it our go-to emotions. And I love being able to share this with other entrepreneurs out there, because like entrepreneurship is a lonely sport, right? And it doesn't have to be, because there are great people like you out there that we can connect with and go, hey, what's going on, and how do I make it through this? So in the go-to emotion sections, I'll give you some topics and ask what your go-to emotion is when everything was going well, and your go-to emotion when things were going poorly, the limiting emotion when things were going poorly. And so pretty simple. It'll make sense as we go. So Sweet. The first one is easy. In business, when things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
I just have to say gratitude. It's just being grateful that I'm able to have the money coming in to be able to help people. It's definitely an emotion of gratitude when things are going well.
And when things are going poorly, what's the limiting emotion?
Oh man. I think it's feelings of inadequacy, that I'm not good enough, like that doubt that like, maybe I'm not great. Maybe I'm full of it. Maybe my stuff isn't, there's a reason people aren't buying. People not like me. Did I do something wrong? All of that kind of stuff is what goes through my mind when things are struggling. I turn the lens on myself and try to nitpick all the things that I might be doing wrong, to not add up to have people make that choice to partner up or, buy the thing. Yeah.
Okay. And next topic is partnerships. We have lots of partnerships. Sometimes we're partners in business. Sometimes it's in collaborations or different things that we're participating in with other entrepreneurs. When things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
Oh man, when things are going well in a partnership, I just feel emotionally just so like, I don't know if it's optimism is the right word, but like I could just run through any challenge. Like
Yeah.
put me in, coach, or put anything, bring it on. Is what I feel when things are going well.
And
Absolutely.
and then when things are going poorly in a partnership, what's the limiting emotion?
Despair. Seriously, like I've had a failed partnership, and it destroyed it. Like not only financially was it hard,
Right.
but like emotionally and mentally, it took such a toll on me to have that frustration of putting your trust into something and having it feeling betrayed,
Yeah.
almost, right?
Yeah.
um is not fun, and like it was a dark time when I went through that, like,
Yeah.
so definitely despair set in for me.
Yeah. All right. So you wouldn't have gotten to this point without coaching. I know at times, I'm sure you are the coach, and at times you are being coached. So we'll split them into two different
Yeah.
pieces. So when you are the coach and things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
Oh man, I don't know how to quantify it in words, as a single emotion, right? It's like when I'm able to give or to coach somebody, I just, the fulfillment, the joy that I get from being able to give them all of me, and give them my best is so rewarding, and they get so much more out of it.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, that joy, I just like pure joy when I'm able to just give to somebody. It's way fun. I love it.
And when you're the coach and things are going poorly, what's the limiting emotion?
It is frustration. Like it's so frustrating because you wonder, like, am I just saying this wrong? How are they not connecting the dots? What is
Right.
the problem here? Why don't you get it?
Right.
Is there something else going on with you, or am I just like totally missing the mark here? And so frustration for sure is what I feel when I get in that
Yeah, for
moment.
sure. Okay, now when you're being coached, because obviously, we talked about Russell, and I'm sure you've had other coaches as well up to this point
Yeah.
now, and plus you were an athlete. So having a coach is become, it's something that we've always done. We have coaches. So when you're getting coaching and things are going well, what's the go-to emotion?
I would go with I don't know, like I'm just so motivated, like to have that reinforcement of things that I'm doing well, and another perspective when it's going well, is it's just so energizing to be like, excellent, okay, bring it on, like what's the next challenge, let's do this. It just motivates you to just keep going. And yeah, so I would say that's what I get with sports or business. I loved that reinforcement of the principles or the things that I was doing well, because then I knew where I could keep putting that energy and improve even more.
Right.
Clarity.
Yeah. So when things are going poorly, when you're getting coached, what's the go-to limiting emotion?
I think it's almost like selfishness to an extent, where it's just like, well, you don't know everything about me, like
Yeah.
you're trying to deflect ownership of your problems, when in reality, if you're struggling or things aren't going well, it's because you're not executing or you're not doing something right.
Right.
And to have somebody shine a flashlight or a spotlight on it, it's not comfortable.
Right.
So you want to deflect as much as you possibly. For me, I want to deflect in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's one thing I have got better at with business side. With sports, I was able to take it, and I'd have my tail between my legs a little bit and stuff. But with business for a long time, that was really hard for me. But that's where I instinctively go, and now I work my way out of it to make progress and put it to work and make good from it.
Nice. Okay, next topic. In your relationship, right? We're talking our relationship. when things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
Honestly, I look at it as love. You know, humanity is storytelling. Storytelling is what builds relationships. You don't go on a first date and not tell any stories. You don't marry somebody without sharing your life experiences and understanding theirs, right? Love doesn't grow, you know, or relationships don't grow without that. And that's what I like. Love is the center of that for me.
Cool. And when things are going poorly in your relationship, what's the limiting go-to emotion?
Man, such a good one. It's one to think, like, I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into that, right? Because people don't want to. But it's for me, I would say the emotion that I'd feel with that or associate with that is fear, really. Fear that I may have done something, whether intentionally or not, to offend or cause them to withdraw or strain that relationship. So I think fear is a big part of that.
Yeah. You said you have kids. You have 4, right?
4 kids. Yep.
Kids, and your youngest is 6,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yep.
your oldest?
Oldest is 16.
Oh, mine too. Mine just turned 16 in August.
We have a 16-year-old girl, 13-year-old boy, 10-year-old boy, 6-year-old boy.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, with kids, when things are going well, what's the go-to emotion?
Oh man. Pride is what comes to mind, but not like the selfish type of pride. Where it's just like you're just like yesterday, my son scored a hat trick in his game,
Nice.
Soccer game, and I was just so proud of him.
Yeah.
That he was able to accomplish that, because it's not. This isn't like, you know, little league tiny. This is like comp soccer. You know. That kind of thing. I was like, it's just pride when things are going well. Pride that you see them taking the appropriate steps or making good choices and all that kind of stuff. And it's awesome. I love it.
When things are going poorly, what's the limiting emotion?
I think for me, I would put it as, you know, inadequacy again. Or, you know, like just feeling that you're not doing enough of your part. If you're not connecting with your kid, or you see them struggling and you don't know how to help them or how to communicate or connect with them to help them overcome it, you know, whether it's with grades or with friends or, you know, social things, just not knowing. You know, I remember what I was like when I was a kid, but times are so different now for my kids than what I experienced that sometimes I don't know how to approach it, you know? And so you feel that inadequacy that you want what's best for them, but you don't know how to actually, you know, give it to them or help facilitate them finding it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's the last one. That was awesome. You are amazing. And it's so cool to just be able to share that, because I think in so many instances that, you know, people out there, even other entrepreneurs, sometimes it's like we do spend a lot of time trying to find our superpower, the thing that we're going to use to, you know, share with the world and change the world. And sometimes I think it's easy to get caught in the trap of like, we're invincible, right? Because we're the superheroes that are leading the way and kind of guiding everybody else. And I think it's really useful and beneficial to just be able to go, oh, okay, I am human. Okay, yeah, I felt that way too, and that's great. But also know that you've overcome it and you've figured out a way to push through, and you are making it work and doing great things. And you are doing great things. Like I said, I'm so honored to have you here today, and I want to give you a shot to just share with the audience how they can connect with you, how they can find the great things that you're doing, and hopefully if it works out, then they can maybe have the opportunity to work with you too.
Right. Well, again, like, thanks for having me on. It's fun in how the world brings people together, right? You know,
it's
we
awesome.
connected through a Utah funnel builder,
Yeah.
funnel hackers group with that Jerem runs, and that's how we met. But like even finding him, it's amazing how, we cross paths and things like that. So thank you. It's fun to be able to chat and all that kind of stuff. But for those of you who are listening, like, you can find me at friendlygiantfilms.com. That's where you can kind of get a sense of what I like to do with stories and videos and that kind of stuff. And it's just so much fun. And I have a free guide there that you can get as well, on crafting stories for your business, right? Connection and everything is everything for me when it comes to business. If you can connect with your people, they will stick with you in the long run, and they will pay you. They will buy your stuff. Helping to find those stories. Like, you think of Tony Robbins, you think of Dean Graziosi, Gary Vee, Russell Brunson types. You've heard their stories millions of times. You've heard the same stories millions of times. You know their backstories, all that kind of stuff. But how many of your people or people that you're trying to market to could say that about you? They know your stories, or they tell their friends about your experience and that kind of stuff. Most likely there's not a whole lot outside of maybe your family members or really, really close friends. And so I love helping people craft those stories that they're going to tell thousands of times over the next 10, 15, 30 years of their career, because that's just going to make you the bulk of your sales and your money and stuff, is that connection. So friendlygiantfilms.com, you can get a free guide as well on how to build those stories. And then I have storytellingframeworks.com, which is you can go and go through a more in-depth training of how to craft those stories. And it's fun. I throw in movie clips, and we watch some scenes from Back to the Future and stuff like that to kind of break it down and show you the principles at work. But those are the two places if you want to kind of dive into my nerdery. But then also I go live on Facebook all the time. I have a Nic Fitzgerald Facebook page where I just go in and share my insights or thoughts on things going on in entrepreneurship and marketing and all that fun stuff too. So
awesome. Well, cool. I will put those links under the podcast, so you'll find them below, and definitely go look up Nic. And for goodness sakes, he put together some awesome free stuff for you. For goodness sakes, go get it. Like you're crazy if you don't go get it. So go do that at the very least, and be able to take advantage of all of the hard work that he put in to help change your world. Nic, I am so grateful and thankful that you're here today, and I am so happy to know you. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and soul and your story with us. And I wish you the best on your journey, and I hope we continue to cross paths as we go.
Yeah, for sure. Again, thanks for having me. We only live a few miles away, so we should like meet up for lunch or something. Yeah, wave across the lake at each other, right? But yeah, thank you for having me, and appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share some of my story. It's always fun. Absolutely.
Take care.
See ya.
Hey, lifers, don't forget to get your free copy of the Every Minute book. You can find it at everyminutebook.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.